Welcome to Mind My Age, presented by Total Life. I'm your host, Neelam Brar. Today we have an extraordinary guest, Dr. Ginette Collazo, an expert in human error reduction and cognitive performance. We're diving into the fascinating world of human behavior, productivity, and how understanding our errors can transform our health and daily habits. Dr. Collazo, to kick things off, we ask all of our guests at Mind My Age, how do you feel today, and how is that shaping your approach to life right now?
Today I feel productive. Today I feel motivated. I'm grateful. So there is a lot of things that happen in our life, and it's a great question because we should start with that in our daily life, like and evaluate things that happened yesterday or the day before and make changes. Those kinds of things that get your day going.
Absolutely. And as a follow up to that, Mind My Age believes that your thoughts control your feelings, actions, and your physical health. So, how old do you think you feel?
21. And I think that a lot of people will agree with that. It's well, I hear a lot about, it's not about the age, it's not about the age. Well, there are things that are about the age. I look in the mirror and I know that I'm not 21, and that's fine. But it's not about that. It's not about looking. It's about how you see things in life. And one thing that it's pretty amazing. It's feeling like 21 with the maturity of I'm 53, and I'm very happy about that. So it's about, not taking life so seriously. At this point, I've learned that I don't care a lot about a lot of things that I used to care before. I just don't care anymore. And those are things that happen with maturity. So try to live your life like you're 21, understanding that life is not that serious at the end of the day.
You're right. And when you have the wisdom of many more years, it's more fun when you can have the approach of a 21-year-old with all
Most
that
of the times
wisdom.
you have the money, and most of the times you have more money also because you're working.
I know the trips definitely get better as you have more money. Let's talk about human error. Can you break down the most common types of errors we make daily and their unseen impacts on our day to day and possibly our health?
Most of the times, in daily life, I remember I work with industries and I talk about a lot of things that have to do with performance, like memory, concentration, cognitive load, all of these things that create conditions to make mistakes in the workplace. Now, if we're talking about your life, the most common things that when where we make mistakes in is in decision making. And the reason for that is because there is a lot of emotional elements that um, play in the process of decision making. And if we're not very aware, we might be making decisions with emotions more than our heads. And that's one thing that we see over and over again. I mean, it happens at work, and it happens in real life.
What are some tips to reduce emotional decision making?
First, take the time to sleep on it. And I'm going to use me as an example. I'm very impulsive, and I go to see a car, and they say a lot of things, and I end up leaving with the car. But that's not what's supposed to happen, and you learn that over the time. You want to remove the emotional side. Now, here's the thing: sometimes we don't understand, or we are not even aware what could be affecting from an emotional standpoint. So in this case, I really recommend having a neutral type of opinion, and my recommendation is always going to be therapy. In terms of friends and family, people have a lot of things that they can say, and a lot of you know they want to help you, but not necessarily they have the tools. So if you're going to make a decision that it's non-recoverable, that it's something that it's very, very important, make sure you have all the details, all the facts. Another thing that helps a lot is to make a list. Make a list of the things that are non-negotiable for you when you're making a decision. For example, you're buying a car, and I'm going to use that. Well, it's non-negotiable that it has 4 doors. So those kinds of things are going to help you like start to remove or eliminate options. So you want to consider and understand what is the things that are more important to you, because we get very impressed by shiny things.
Remove yourself from that situation, remove the emotion, make a list of the non-negotiables. What else?
And also make sure that the non-negotiables are really non-negotiables, because people say, well, this is non-negotiable, but then when things go well, then we can do that, then we can adjust to it. So make sure it's really non-negotiable. Another thing that happens a lot with decision making is the lack of, let me see, how can I say this, the lack of courage to give up. And let me explain this. Sometimes we make a decision and we're going to do certain things, right? And we start doing them. And at some point we see that it's not really working, right? But we might think, you know what, I've spent so much time on this, I invested so much money, so I'm just going to finish. I'm gonna, and in reality, sometimes you just have to let go certain things, especially that cost fallacy decision-making process. And I can tell from my own experience. For example, you invest in a business, right? And I invested a $5,000 in this business, but then things are not going good. But I already spent $5,000, so I'm not gonna quit. I'm gonna spend another $5,000 and that sunk cost fallacy makes us stay in a problem, thinking, but I have invested so much. Well, it's you're going to keep investing, and you're going to keep losing if you don't give up. And sometimes we do have to remove ourselves from situations that are not gonna, that the benefits do not outweigh the efforts and the money and the investments and energy and emotional weight, all of those things. So sometimes we do have to remove ourselves from maybe unrealistic results, but we always have hope. And yes, hope is great, but be very careful.
It's interesting you say that. I'm the daughter of immigrant parents, and one of the things I've realized now that I've done so much reflection on habits and why I do certain things I do is I've realized that my parents have a tendency to really focus on the sunk costs and try to recover them, kind of, because that's like more scarcity mentality. Whereas it's more important now that I've kind of started to think about decision-making processes, it's more important to think about opportunity cost and what you could be doing with that time instead of trying to recover the sunk cost. How do you, when you think about that decision-making spectrum, what are some tips our listeners could be applying to decisions or things they're doing with their time or money or resources right now to identify whether they're chasing a sunk cost or this is really a rational opportunity?
Oh, that requires the thinking and sitting down and analyzing the situation at hand, and being very objective in terms of what you're evaluating. So it's more about being aware of what's happening and understanding that things can change from one day to the other. I can give you an example. I started working with the development of a software, right? And everything was going fine, but halfway through, artificial intelligence showed up. So that was the moment in which I said, well, probably the software is not going to be the best option. Maybe we should move towards, a chat that with artificial intelligence that's going to do the same thing that the software was doing. But I already invested like $15,000. So it was like, do I continue? Do I at the end of the day, it was like, I'm not going to finish a process that is going to be very cumbersome at the end and very costly. So just leave it like that and just let's reinvest in artificial intelligence. So things can change from one day to the other. And that's why we have to be very aware, especially with those big decisions. Decisions on, there are many decisions. We make decisions on medical treatment. Do I want this medical treatment? Do I want this other one? I need the facts. Do I need this type of medication? Do I really think that I should go with this type of medication? Regardless of the doctor says, they recommend a lot of things, but sometimes we can say, you know what? For example, in my case, when they, prescribe medications, I always ask for a medication that doesn't have any patent pending. I prefer, medications that have already demonstrated, besides clinical trials that we all know that are a little weird. So I'm the kind of person who's like, oh, no, I want a medication that has already, that doesn't have a patent, and whomever is going to die already did. Sorry to say that, but that's how I say it. The uh side effects, all of those things, you would have a lot more information. So it's just some examples, and these can expand to many other areas of our life.
So let's move on. In your book, Human Error, Root Cause Determination Model, you explore these concepts in depth. How does this model help in understanding and mitigating errors in everyday life?
We make mistakes because we can, because our systems and our environment allows it. Okay, so for example, when I work in companies, I make sure that that the work environment is appropriate, because I cannot change human condition, but I can change the conditions in which humans work. I can do that. So understanding humans, and human performance allows us to say, well, you have to make sure that people have enough space. You have to make sure that people have enough time. You have to make sure that people are not multitasking, which is impossible for humans, even though a lot of people think that we can do a lot of things at the same time. It doesn't work like that. It's totally linear, and we might forget things. So it's not like concurrent or anything like that. So there are a lot of things that we can do. So in terms of the environment, what you want to do is design for your own environment. I'm gonna give an example again using myself. I'm gonna make a diet, right? I'm gonna be dieting. So I'm gonna remove everything that could derail my diet. There is nothing around me that will put me in a situation to make a decision, because then I'm going to make a decision based on the emotion and because I want it right now. And those are the kinds of things that we do. If I don't want you to make a mistake or forget something, then I have to put a timer, then I have to do a list, then I have to do something, an alarm, something that triggers, because my memory is not good. Checklist, all of these things. And those are the kinds of things that I usually consider that you can do in your own life. For example, I'm very pro safety, right? And I want to make sure that people don't put themselves in situations where they can get hurt just because they want to achieve a goal that it's either for life or for work. And sometimes we do that, and that's why we have to get those things that are very important and create habits with it. And I'm going to give an example. In my home, I don't leave cupboards open or drawers open. It's if you're going to walk with a knife or something like that, everybody knows how they're going to hold it. And if you're going up in a corner with a knife, you have to be very careful, because someone could be coming this way and you're coming this way with a knife. They know all about this. In my home, everybody knows that that they have to be very careful. I don't allow anyone to put when you go to the grocery store, all these bags in top of the stove. You put the things there, and the same products can actually turn on the stove, and then you have a fire. So those are all things that we need to think a little bit ahead. If I'm going to do, I don't know, I'm gonna fry something. Well, then when you're frying something, you should know that you cannot leave the oil there, because if you forget, it's a total, possibility of having a fire. So in those cases, I know I'm doing this, so I'm going to stay here. So all of it has to do with awareness, and that's the reason why we teach people and share these kinds of tips, because not all the time we think about these things. Actually, we really think things are not gonna happen to us. We are overconfident. We really think we are better than we are, and we're not. And even though that's very good, I need to think that I'm very good, because that helps with my self-esteem, and that's great. A lot of people that are very realistic are depressed, so we do understand that self-esteem is very important, but you cannot overestimate your capacity. If you think that someone can get in an accident because they're speeding, then you should think that you can get in an accident if you're speeding. And we usually don't apply those to ourselves. So it's kind of looking in a mirror and thinking, what are the things that I will recommend to someone else, then so I can do them myself. Because if I would, there is a saying that if I did everything I say I should do, my life will be perfect.
I love that. It's easier said than done, right?
Of course. That's why I say, well, yeah, I should drink more water. I should do exercise. So if we would really do the things that we should think that we should, you would have a different life. So take that into consideration. And you don't have to do everything at the same time. You do one thing a day, and then you will, um, create from that and develop from that.
It's interesting because what you're describing is essentially how we can design our environments to optimize our success. And as a daughter of aging parents, I'm constantly thinking about like what can I be changing in their environment so that they're more likely to make good decisions. And
Yeah,
in
and
fact,
and not only that, we want people to do things right without even noticing. So another thing that we really, really recommend is creating new habits, and those things we can do consciously. If I want to make sure that every time I close the drawer, for example, because I and I don't know why, but it happens. A lot of people can't. My daughter, she goes to the kitchen and she starts opening everything. But when she hears me that I'm coming, she's like closing everything, because sometimes we think that, oh my God, that's not something that is going to make a difference, or you're always thinking, like something bad is going to happen. No, it's not. It's not. It's not being negative or that something bad is going to happen. It's about risk assessment, and there are many moments in which we should assess the risk. And when we're talking about human error, we cannot say, well, don't be negative, don't put that in the universe. No, it is in the universe. What we're trying to see is make sure that we can predict what could go wrong, and then believe that it might go wrong, and protect ourselves, and put barriers of defense or anything like that. So that's more or less what we talk about. There are other things like, for example, and you mentioned, we were talking earlier, you talked about the checklists, right? And there are very good, especially with memory. We have lost almost 50% of our memory capacity in the last 10 years, and it has to do with the fact that we are delegating our memory to gadgets, to smartphones, smart TVs, smart watches, smart calendars. Everything is getting smarter, but we are not necessarily getting better memory because we're not using it. When you don't use a skill for a long time, you might forget. And actually, I have I've heard about people that say, one skill, once you learn how to run a bike, then you won't forget. Well, I want all of you to know that that's totally fake. I knew how to ride a bike, and I had an accident the other day. It was like, well, you know what? No, I'm not riding a bike anymore, because with time you do lose certain type of skills, and it does. So when it comes to memory, we should understand that we cannot trust memory. If you're going to be doing something that is very critical, you don't want to trust your memory. You want to do a checklist. You want to do something that will have a reminder, because we are not good with memory. Another thing is um, detection. We trust a lot what we see, and we see a lot of things that are not there, and sometimes we don't see what's there, and that's another thing that we have to we need to not trust ourselves, and then do it once or twice and so forth. No, I don't know if there is a particular situation that you have seen in your practice that that will be something that is common that you see, as in errors in terms of the most common errors that you might see. I always ask, because sometimes I talk about certain type of errors, but they tell me no. But in my case, what's happening is that people are not following instructions, or people are not using the right tools.
Yeah. So, one of the common challenges that we're seeing with older adults that are working with Total Life is that they're navigating something new, like a massive transition, whether it is your entire livelihood changing through retirement, a new diagnosis that you now have to adjust your food, your sleep, your diet, your exercise, everything changes all of the sudden after a new diagnosis. A transition from, your home that you grew up in to maybe assisted living or an independent living residence. So there's some really large changes that start happening, voluntary or involuntary. And I think these have a dramatic impact on mood, memory, sense of self-worth, and almost always on your routine, which impacts memory. So yeah, if there are tips that our listeners could be thinking about, both for themselves or for their parents or grandparents, what would some of those tips be?
Yeah, and you brought something that is important, which is change management and how to cope with change. And yeah, we know that life has a lot of changes that we are going to go through in our life, but the one that you're talking about is a very big change. It's basically your whole lifestyle, and it could be very overwhelming. And when you're overwhelmed, you paralyze, and when you paralyze, you don't do the things that you need to do. But the reason why we're paralyzed is because we don't know where to start. And one of the things that I usually recommend in these cases is that you do a list of the things that you can do one a day, and then check that you did it. We think sometimes that I'm not moving forward. But if you think about it, what you did yesterday, it was a step moving forward. Maybe you looked at the type of food that you can order if you don't cook, for example, and all of a sudden you say like, well, now I have to eat in a different diet, and I started looking something. That add that to the fact that you did that, because you're not doing. It might feel like you're not doing, but you are doing. So make a list and put the most critical ones at the beginning, and do one thing at a time. And you will notice that you feel like, yeah, I'm moving. It's not that difficult. I'm moving forward. I'm doing things. It might not see, or it might not be that noticeable, but I am doing things. And that's I think that's the best way. It's like eat the elephant in small pieces. Of course, you're going to address what's critical and time sensitive first, of course, but you want to um, be aware of the things that you are doing that are contributing to this next phase, and don't be so hard on yourself.
I like that because it's almost always a big shock to the system when you learn something new about your health. And so many people learn in their doctor's office, and then they go home, and then, they're left to their own habits and devices to figure out what next. And what you've just said is so interesting, because you're basically saying, go into your fridge, get rid of the food that's not going to serve you anymore. Think about your routine.
Don't worry about the cost. Oh, I just got groceries. The sunk cost fallacy comes in. Well, throw it away. It's going to be a lot more expensive um, you know, to have issues with your health. Not throw it away.
It's so true. When you're full, don't keep eating just because you paid for it, right?
Exactly, exactly. And then now you know better for the next time, and that's okay. But yes, there are a lot of things that we need to do in those situations, and we get stuck because we think we're not advancing, but we are. Impossible that you even if you sat for a few minutes and think about what's happening and did some reflection, that's important. That's an action. Well, today I reflected. I did something that contributes to my process, and that's going to not only ease you down in terms of your cognitive load, but also it's going to motivate you to continue to do other things.
Cognitive performance is crucial for staying sharp. What simple cognitive techniques can we use daily to enhance our mental performance and reduce the errors?
Well, there is a lot of, I'm going to talk about technology apps that have exercises for attention, focus, or memory. Or if you don't use the apps or anything like that, then memory gains, attention gains, something that stimulates those mental processing elements, and exercise it all the time. Try to memorize phone numbers again. It's just exercising it, and especially when we are starting to with age, it gets a little bit more complicated. That's why we want to make sure that we are. Some things that you can do is do math problems, meaning basically that mental sharpness on doing a few math problems. Memory games, it's to engage the brain. Remove technology for a little bit and take maybe an hour, 2 hours a day to do something without technology. One thing that is very interesting is that when pilots are being trained, the instrumentation in the plane is covered, meaning that you're going to fly based on your internal feedback. Right? They teach you, well, you're going to be 20,000 feet when you see the horizon in this place and blah, blah, blah. And that's how they learn. And then once they know, then they use their instruments because they're intended to be assisting, not being the primary decision making. So that's basically what I'm saying. Try to for some time not use technology. Try to probably in the morning, say, well, what do I have in my calendar today? But don't look at the calendar. Try to do a list and then look at the calendar and say, okay, so these are the kinds of things that you can challenge yourself. Just compete against yourself. There are again those apps and those softwares that help and give you the scoring. So again, it's using the environment, and also you can play games. For example, I'm in a place, and I can say, well, I'm going to memorize everything that is in this side of the room, and then you try to write. Let me see if I can remember and write everything that was in that shelf, for example. Those are things that you can do, and you don't need money. You just need curiosity and see how you're doing, and exercising, and it takes time also from problems. You're just focusing on those activities for yourself.
When I was in high school, I did an interview to become an airline stewardess. I never got the job, but I always thought it was interesting that one of the exercises they made us do was to observe a photo of a bunch of passengers, and they gave us 2 minutes to kind of look at that photo, and then they took it away, and then they started asking, where was the briefcase, where, who was drinking a coffee, and you were essentially kind of trying to pull back your recall memory, and identify what you could remember. I wasn't very good at it back then. So I've always thought to myself, I need to be working on improving my memory skills. And it's a muscle. You've got to exercise it.
And that's exactly how you should do it. It's like because now you do that exercise and then you say, well, I missed a lot of things, and that increases your situation awareness, or your capability of being aware of things that are happening around. So it's an interesting thing that they do that, because it makes sense, and you need to be aware of everything that is happening in a plane, especially when it comes to safety and security and those type of things, which is the main job of flight attendants. The flight attendants are not, waiters and waitresses. That's not their job. Their job is safety and security. Of course, they help with that, but that's not their job. I mean, it is, but it's not the important thing. And and that's why we have to be very respectful, which is something that I've seen that it's not necessarily happening today.
Well, fun games that our parents can be playing even to check their memory and exercise their memory is like, okay, let's name all the meals we ate this week, right? Just remembering what you ate. Remembering, girlfriends love to ask their boyfriends and husbands, do you remember the dress I wore for this event? And it's, a lot of people fail, but that's a great example of like memory recall exercises and ways to just have fun with it.
Yeah, that's, it's entertaining and and entertainment, but you get a benefit for your life. And there is a lot of things that all these crossword puzzles, all of these things help. We don't use them anymore that much, and that's exactly why we are not that sharp. For example, today in schools, they're not teaching how to write in cursive anymore, and that was very important for the development of the brain. The movement and putting together the letters, and seeing an holistic piece of information. It's all together. And for some reason, we're not doing it anymore. So maybe we should do that in our homes. Another thing, you have a baby. The babies need to crawl. Forget about their walking. Give a break. Give some time for babies to crawl, because that's going to develop their brain, and the coordination between both hemispheres. So, there are many things that can be done when it comes to the brain, but we do know that technology has been helping to take burden out of our lives, to make it easier. But they have also taken our memory and attention capacity. So, we have to be cognizant of everything, and not everything is 100% good or 100% bad.
Jeanette, checklists are often touted as powerful tools for productivity and error reduction. Can you explain the value of using a checklist and how one might create an effective checklist for their day-to-day routine?
Yes. When it comes to checklists, first of all, you need to make sure that you have all the items that you need to put in that checklist. And it can happen because it happens to me. I travel a lot, and I have a checklist for traveling, and things change. For example, I had, I don't know, like bringing with me, I don't know, like that, I don't know, things that have changed, like an adapter for something. Well, today we don't need that adapter anymore, so we remove that and we add what we need, and just keep it updated, but just make sure you have everything. But the most important thing is that you use it, and that you are very disciplined in using it, because once we have a checklist, sometimes we just look at the checklist and say, like, yeah, I have these, I did this. No, you have to go back and check, because sometimes we think we did something and we didn't, because we did it yesterday. And that's still in my brain. So yes, I did pick up that. No, you did not. You did that yesterday, not today. So you have to do it again. So make sure you use them, and don't overestimate your capacity of memory. I use my checklist 100% all the time, and the one or two times that I've been like, you know what, I know I have that in my bag, when I got there was not. So it's no, it's be very disciplined and challenge yourself and assume that you're going to miss something. That's what you have to assume. Otherwise, the checklist is not gonna, it's not gonna, bring awareness. So make a list, use it all the time. Remove the things that you don't need anymore, because otherwise we just start losing um, trust in your own checklist. Add the things, keep it updated of the things that you do, and have one for each one of the things that you need to have one. You would determine that based on what you do every day. Taking medications, that's I took my medication. I have my checklist. Sometimes I'm like, did I take my medication? I'm not sure. Should I? Since I don't remember, these are things that go into my head. Should I have it again, just in case? No, you have. So those are things that are critical and can make you make mistakes. And those are critical things that you should be aware. And let me tell you, the best person to take care of your of your things, and the things you have to do, and the things that are going to help you, the best one is you. There's no, you have to be aware of everything that happened. Nobody else is going to be paying attention to every single detail of your life, so you do it yourself.
Why does that happen? I mean, many of us are guilty of wondering if we locked the door. Did we turn the iron off? Did we turn the stove off? And that hesitation or that paranoia kicks in usually when you're like a few blocks outside of the house. What is the psychological reason behind this, and how can we improve so that when we're in that moment turning it off, we can store that memory and not get paranoid after? Because most of the time you did turn it off. There's always that one time you didn't.
Okay, I'm gonna be I rather err on the safe side. So if you have that hunch, go back and check. But this could become a problem every time. So what you want to do, for example, and this is what I do. When I turn off my stove, I say, I look at it, I touch it twice. It looks like a moron being, obsessive compulsive, like, and I say, inspector, I say the 13th inspector did it, and I never forget that. So, and for example, the iron, just don't turn it off, just unplug it, forget about turning it off. So those are things that are going to help you, and make sure that when you're doing it, you say it out loud. I just turned on this, I just took this. You say it out loud, because and it will stay there, it will stay there. But remember, we do a lot of things that are unconscious, and that's where paranoia kicks in. So that's why the things that that are dangerous, like stove, iron, curler, anything, all of those things you want to say out loud, it's off now, it's safe.
Same with where you put your keys. Have a place where you're putting them so that you're not always looking for them every day, right?
Correct. And well, that helps a lot, because you don't even, after some time, you don't even notice that you did place the keys where they need to be. That's why I say that, as much as possible, things that you have to do over and over again, create that habit. Like we did with the seat belt, and that's just make sure that we do it over and over again, so it becomes a habit and you do it automatically.
Janet, many of our listeners are caregivers and they're managing their day to day plus the day to day and care of a loved one. So it's a lot of decisions, a lot of different important responsibilities, a lot of regular repeating tasks that need to be done. What are some of your, what's some insider advice you can provide our listeners in helping managing all of those competing priorities and reducing errors?
I'm not familiarized with the process, but I imagine, or if you don't have it, you should create a protocol, of course, for like a procedure of the things that you're going to be doing, right? My recommendation is that you go through that procedure or that protocol and go step by step, and go like, step number one, this is what I have to do. Ask yourself, what if I do more? What if I do less? Or what if I skip this step? right? And if the answer is, well, nothing happens, it's okay, then it's okay. But if something could go wrong and you say, well, what if I skip this? No, if I skip this, or if I get confused here, this is going to be a big problem. So that's the moment in which you want to highlight in your protocol in a way that you can clearly see that this step right here is critical. And if I'm going to forget something, it can't be this one. And go through all of those things. What do you want to ask yourself? Does it require memory, attention? Memory, attention, or visual detection. And once you have those three, then now you're going to say, okay, I cannot confuse, for example, medications and people, right? I can get confused, just like it happens to me, right? That who is the patient, or and I know that there is a lot of ways to validate that, like asking the person, your name, because they do that in hospitals. I don't know if a day-to-day assisted living will have those controls, because it's not the hospital. But I imagine that if you are a caregiver, you want to make sure that you protect you from you. And because at the end of the day, responsibility is it's an individual responsibility. So at the end of the day, if you make certain type of mistakes that you shouldn't, because that's what the law is going to say, well, you shouldn't, because you have a protocol, you have this and that. So make sure that you protect yourself, and protecting yourself, you protect the patient. It's going to be like that.
At Total Life, we focus on mental health and counseling for seniors. How do you see reducing errors as a key component of maintaining cognitive health as we age? For example, forgetfulness can lead to insecurity and self doubt, which is not great for confidence. So, how can one use therapy as a way to improve their day to day?
Well, one thing that I've learned, I'm a big fan of therapy. I've been in therapy most of my life. I think everybody should have a therapist. And the good thing is that in this day and age, it's very accepted. Before it was like, well, I talk to my friends, everybody has a therapist. And I'm like, that's so good. That's so good, because it's like, so how does it help? Well, sometimes we don't understand that certain things are normal. And when we get that information that it's normal, that this happens, this is what we're going to do, then the stress and anxiety and the worry goes down. And it happens over and over again, like, I'm anxious about this and I'm very nervous. Well, that's normal. Let's work now with what's causing the nervousness, and let's work on that so you can cope with it. So I strongly believe that therapist allows us to see a life in an objective way, without judgment or self-judgment, or judgment of the environment. It just gives you a clear vision of what's happening, and remove those self-defeating behaviors that are like, sometimes we do drown in a puddle, and that's why therapy is it's so important. It's like, sometimes I've said, this is terrible, what's happening, blah, blah, blah. And it's like, I don't see the terrible thing there. That's normal. It's going to take this time. Most people go through this. This is what it goes. This is what happens. And therapy helps with that. So I strongly recommend it's well, it just helps. And that should be the priority. Mental health is very important. I know that we think about the physical health and all of that, but mental health not only is a big problem, but also affects your biology, and affects your life. And I'm going to give you an example of things that happen. If you were born and you were raised in a household where things were not good, and there were fights or things that get you either very nervous, or you are going to go through very from peaks of emotions. I'm scared, I'm anxious because this happened, and then I'm going to be depressed of what happened. And it's going to happen so much because that's how you grew up. Well, your brain is creating highs and lows, and most likely bipolar disorder, because then the brain, it's working with the chemistry. So the same way that we create habits, the brain creates habits. So now it's going to push the chemicals, and now you have a manic episode, and all of a sudden it removes it, and now you have a depressive episode. So it's because your brain has created that, and the only thing that you can do to help with that is medication, right? Now, then you can continue with therapy, working on that, and you might get those levels back. It all depends how, of course, you have to do this, supervised with the psychologist and with the psychiatrist. But what I'm trying to say is that, if your mental health is good, there is a lot of things that are going to be good. You're not going to have that much stress, your stomach, your ulcers, headaches, so many things. And I know that there is a lot of medication for a lot of things, but therapy helps you identify the root cause, so you don't have to fix a problem that doesn't necessarily needs to be fixed with medication. And then if there is medication that needs to have, then of course that's going to happen. But mental health is something that all of us should prioritize. And this is a message that I'm going to send through your platform. If all of us work on our mental health, then the world is going to be a better place. I think that the most critical and horrible things that happen every day, it's because of mental health. You fix that, you fix a lot of things.
You said something really interesting right now. You mentioned root cause, and if you don't understand the root cause of why something is happening, it's tough to improve it or solve it. Many of us live with emotions, thoughts, actions, reactions that are trained in our upbringing, in our childhood, in our experiences, and we sometimes don't even know that we've picked those up along the way. Can you give me examples on how people today listening could think about their approaches to events or incidences or challenges, and how to identify the root cause of why they react a certain way? The why.
Yes. Interesting that you mentioned that, because it again is about the root cause. Yes, it's about the root cause. Now, how do I know that if I'm angry, why I'm reacting with this so much anger? Well, I'm very literal. So you are going to go to internet and you're going to print the emotional wheel. Emotions wheel. Why? Because fear, for example, or anger, it's not the root feeling. That's not that, it's coming from somewhere else. So you have to find your primary primary emotions that result. For example, shame comes from fear. So I don't want to be ashamed, but I don't even know that it's coming from fear of rejection or fear of these things. So then you have to work on that, because once you have worked on that, then shame is going to disappear, because it's not a primary emotion. So that's why we want to make sure which is the primary emotion, and then put names to that. It's it's shameful because I am scared to disappoint, because when I was a kid, I thought that I was disappointing my family, whatever. And that's where therapy comes in as well, because you want to understand the root cause of your reactions or your emotions, so you can remove them. And then again, removing the environment, everything that could create that.
Dr. Plaza, what's the single most important piece of advice you would give someone looking to transform their habits or improve their life today using the strategies that you found in your research?
First, well, the motivation. Okay. Now, sometimes we know we have to do certain things, but we are not motivated to do it. So what I think that it's important to do is understanding why we should do this and what is going to solve, for example, right? Find the main reason. For example, I want to start exercising because I want to be healthy. But then why do you want to be healthy? Well, because I want to be in my daughter's wedding. I want to see my grandkids. I want to have this type of life. Now that motivates me, as opposed to I have to go to do exercise. So find what's really important to you when it comes to those things that you want to do, and put that in the front of your mind. Like, I'm doing this because I want to see my daughter get married. I want to live a healthy life. I want to, and what's really important to you. And that's because I was a smoker, and I would go to the doctors and everybody like, "Hey, you have to stop smoking." And I was like, yeah, like, I'm going to do it just because you say it. That's, knowledge on itself does not modify behavior. So I know that it's not good. I know that it's dangerous. I do it because I like it. And in this moment, liking it is more important than living, I guess. Right. So that's, those are the kinds of things that you want to find out. So what do you do when you want to change certain habits? Is understanding what's really valuable, what really I get out of this, and put it in perspective. If you're not motivated, and again, the motivation needs to be internal. I remember saying I'm gonna stop smoking when my motivation is internal, like saying, yeah, the fact that you tell me it's not gonna make a difference, I have to go through it. And I went through my process, and when I decided that I wanted to stop smoking, then I did it. Because if I do it because somebody tells me, then I'm gonna want to smoke more. That's how life works. Now, of course, there are other moments in which you don't have a choice. And it's those moments in which you have a diagnosis, in which you just have to do this change from today to tomorrow. We cannot wait until you're motivated, because then you would have to work with more, behavior-based type of approaches. But, motivation is responsible for the intensity, quality, and direction of ongoing behavior. So be motivated.
Thank you so much for joining us, Dr. Collazo. This has been incredibly insightful. Listeners, if you're inspired by today's conversation, visit totallife.com to learn more about coaching and therapy to help you age well. Remember, it's never too late to start taking care of your mental health and thereby your physical health. So stay engaged, stay mindful, stay healthy, and keep thriving. Until next time, this is Neelam Brar signing off.